Imagine working a full-time job, going to college, yet not getting paid for your full-time job. This is what it's like to be a college athlete today. In the rest of the speech, I will be talking about the NCAA's current guidelines about athletes getting paid, why athletes should be paid, and what will happen if these current guidelines stay the way they are. So, according to an article written by Spencer Boquet-Lindahl and published in a 2019 edition of the New York Times, the NCAA made over $1 billion in revenue in 2017. This money is given back to the schools and used to fund their sports programs, coaches, and administrators. So the NCAA is a nonprofit organization. So all the money they make, like it said in this article, goes back to the schools to pay for their coaches, the people that work in regards to the sports that the revenue's made from, and to pay like the administrators, so like the athletic director, and to help fund scholarships that are given to the college athletes. But the college athletes don't see any of this in monetary compensation, just in scholarship form. College athletes are forbidden to be paid in exchange for the use of their name, image, or likeness. So what do college athletes pay for? An article written by Justin Reyes for the Papyrus, a student website at Greenville University, said that for some college athletes, things such as tuition, gear, recovery items, and other necessities are not free. Athletes have to pay out of pocket but cannot afford to because they do not have time for a job. So at bigger Division I universities, there's more students, more athletes, they bring in more revenue, therefore they have more money for facility costs and to give out scholarships to their athletes. That way the athletes aren't paying as much out of pocket if they're not on a full ride scholarship. And then as these divisions get smaller, the number of athletes also get smaller, and the amount of revenue that they bring in is smaller as a result. So they have to pay more out of pocket to go to school, to pay for the stuff they need to perform at this high of a level. So are athletes considered employees is another question. According to Kenneth J. Cooper's article in Diverse Issues in Higher Education, there's three tests to see if someone's considered an employee under common law. These three tests are the rights of the person controlled by someone else? Is that person being compensated, and is that person economically dependent on the compensation? So under these three tests, a college athlete would be considered an employee because the coaches control most of their decisions, what they're allowed to do outside of the sport, when their classes are. They get scholarships, so they're compensated, and they rely on their scholarships for food and shelter. So these scholarships help put them in dorm rooms at school, pay for meal plans just like we would, but that's what their scholarship pays for. So the solution to this problem, one solution is an athlete salary. So the article by Spencer Boquet-Lindahl in the New York Times suggests paying the athletes based off the proportion of revenue that they bring in. This being said, the top 10% of football players and the top 16% of basketball players would make $400,000 a year and $250,000 a year, respectively. This would be an example of the players benefiting from all the revenue that they bring in. So all that $1 billion total revenue that the NCAA made, broken up here by sport, this would be the athletes from these sports getting their proportion from the total revenue that they brought in. So it'd be similar to looking at the NCAA as a business rather than just a nonprofit organization. And there's a lot of student support behind the idea of paying college athlete salaries. According to a recent poll of 2,501 college students done by College Pulse, a majority of students support initiatives to pay college athletes. 38% said that they favor, and 15% of students said they strongly favor paying college athletes a salary. Among athletes, 31% favored a salary and 40% strongly favored. 80% of students and 83% of athletes favored athletes profiting off their name. So a majority of students, college students just like us, agree that these athletes should be paid, and nearly 83% of them believe that they should be compensated for the use of their name, likeness, or image. That being jerseys that get sold that have their number, they would get some of that revenue. If they sign autographs or their autographed memorabilia gets sold, they get some of that revenue, just as a professional player would. There is another solution, however, that wouldn't affect the NCAA as much as a $400,000 a year salary would be, and that is a stipend or allowance. So Michael Wilbon, a co-host on ESPN's Pardon the Interruption podcast, writes that it is commendable that the NCAA has paid millions into a fund for in-need athletes to cover clothing purchases, emergency travel, and medical expenses. There's also a special assistance fund and a student athlete opportunity fund. He goes on to ask the question of why can't the hundreds of millions that these athletes are making be transferred to these funds and more accessible to the athletes. So that's just an example of the NCAA already has things in place to help these athletes. It's just a matter of why isn't all the money that they're making going into these funds, and how in the future years coming, how can the NCAA help out with this? So there has been a shift since the NCAA hasn't been paying their athletes. A lot of kids coming out of high school have started to go play overseas professionally before they go to the NBA or NFL or wherever they're going to play professionally. They play overseas, they make money over there, then they come make money over here. Especially if you think you're only going to be in school for 1-2 years anyway, that more kids are trending toward that. And also these kids that don't have full ride scholarships, and athletics are the only way that they're going to college, and they don't get they don't get paid to do so, so they can't afford to stay in college. So in the end, athletes are making the school so much money, but yet they're seeing so little of it. So thank you.